Chosen one, welcome to the greatest mistake your enemy ever made, a tactical failure born from the fact that everyone they asked had nothing but praise for you, and now they feel stupid for ever questioning your character. Someone launched a mission against your name in total silence, certain they could dismantle your reputation, only to find that your history of integrity had already built a fortress they couldn't penetrate. You never had to defend yourself because the trap they built with their own hands snapped shut on them the moment they encountered the undeniable truth of your impact. Every great conflict has a moment where the opposition believes they are winning, where the plan feels airtight and confidence is at its peak. This was no different. Your enemy had been watching you, studying you, building a case in the quiet of their own mind for longer than you know. The resentment had been sitting there, collecting weight. At some point, they decided enough was enough. They were going to go out into the world and find the evidence that would finally crack what you had built. Do not underestimate how calculated this was. This was not a reckless, impulsive move. This was a deliberate strategy. In their mind, they assembled a mental list of people who might have something to say, people from your past, people who had walked through hard seasons near you, people they assumed were quietly holding a grudge, people they believed were simply waiting for someone to ask the right question. They told themselves, everybody has detractors, everybody has someone who will talk, I just have to find them. And they were so certain that certainty matters, because the complete collapse of that certainty is exactly where this is going. Here is what they did not know, and what you need to understand about your own life right now. A person who has spent significant time moving in truth, in genuine care for others, in consistency that does not shift when the audience changes. That person does not leave the kind of trail that hunters can follow. They leave a completely different kind of trail. And your enemy was about to discover exactly what kind of trail you left. They were the setup. You were never the target. You were the revelation. Before reaching what happened when they started asking, you need to understand why they started in the first place. Because the reason is the most important piece of all of this. They did not come after your name because you wronged them. Let that land. They did not launch this campaign because you made a mistake that needed correcting. They launched it because you kept winning, because you kept growing, because every time they looked in your direction, you were still standing, still moving, still becoming more of who you are supposed to be, and that truth was intolerable to them. There is a particular kind of person who cannot watch someone else thrive without turning it into something personal. When that kind of person sees your growth, they do not feel inspired, they feel accused. Your progress feels like a judgment on their stagnation. Your peace feels like an indictment of their chaos. Your name being spoken with respect feels like it is somehow taking something from them, even though you never asked for a single thing they had. That is the wound underneath their entire mission. It is not about you. It is not about anything you did. It is the unbearable weight of watching someone live well when they have chosen not to. So they convinced themselves this was about truth. They reframed their jealousy as concern and dressed their resentment up in the language of accountability. And they genuinely believed the costume they put on. That is the most dangerous version of an adversary. Not the one who knows they are wrong, but the one who has fully talked themselves into believing they are right. But here is what they failed to calculate. When motivation is that poisoned, it bleeds through. People can feel it. The energy of someone genuinely seeking truth is open, curious, and willing to be surprised by what they find. The energy of someone seeking ammunition is tight, leading, and visibly disappointed when answers do not land where they need them to. Every person they approached felt that tension, even when they could not name it. Something was off about the questions, something was off about the follow-up, something was driving those conversations that had nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. The foundation of their plan was compromised before they made a single move. A compromised foundation does not hold weight. The moment they began piling their hopes on top of it, it was already starting to give way. The mission began. They moved. They made first contact with someone who knew you, someone they believed would hand them exactly what they needed. And they asked their question, careful and casual, framed like genuine concern, as if they were simply checking in. Hey, what do you really think about so-and-so? I have been hearing some things. They paused. They leaned in. They waited for the kind of darkness they had come to collect, and instead they got light. The person looked at them, perhaps a little confused, and said something that made the whole plan go flat. What are you talking about? That is one of the most genuine people I know, or maybe I have never had a single problem with them. Why? What are you hearing? Notice what happened in that moment. They came to ask questions and ended up being questioned. The dynamic reversed before they had time to process it. They pushed past it. They told themselves this person was biased, maybe too close to you to be objective. They would try someone else, someone with more distance, someone less attached to the outcome. Another attempt. The same question, different framing, the same result. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. This is the first moment where something began forming inside them that they did not want to name, a small tremor, a flicker of doubt. It was not about you, not yet. It was about the plan itself, about the certainty they had arrived with. That certainty was not gone, but it had been touched. They moved forward again, and the next answer did not simply repeat the praise, it went further. This person did not offer a polite defense. They shared a specific memory, a real moment, the time you showed up when no one else did, the way you handled something that most people would have mishandled entirely, a detail that could not be invented and could not be dismissed. Something in them went cold, because you can argue with an opinion, but you cannot argue with a memory. Watch what they did with that cold feeling. They did not stop. That is the part that reveals them fully. A person of genuine integrity would have paused right there, let that specific memory settle, and asked themselves whether they had this wrong. But that is not what they did. They pushed forward. They told themselves the next person would be different. They adjusted the angle, softened the phrasing in one place, sharpened it in another, searching for the crack in the wall they were becoming less and less sure even existed. That decision to keep pressing after the memory, after the unscripted and sincere praise, after the moment that should have stopped them, that is where they moved from misguided into fully exposed. Because you do not keep pushing when evidence contradicts your theory, unless the theory was never really about evidence. You do not keep searching when the search keeps coming up clean, unless what you were truly looking for was validation of a feeling you already had. This was not a genuine search for truth. It was a hunt run by someone who needed to feel right about something they were feeling deeply wrong about. The people they spoke to picked up on that shift. After those conversations, more than one of them sat with a quiet realization: this person is not concerned about so-and-so. This person is obsessed with so-and-so, and obsession carries a recognizable signature. It smells like pride that got wounded and never healed. It smells like comparison that curdled into contempt. It smells like someone who looked at your life and decided, consciously or not, that they could not rest until they found something in it to use against you. You were not aware of any of this happening. You were simply going about your life, completely unbothered, living in the truth you had always lived in. And the whole time, without knowing it, the life you had already built was quietly handling everything. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have gone quiet, videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. And when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the dark elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine trial today, risk-free, and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. A plan built on a false assumption does not collapse all at once. It collapses in stages, and each stage is worse than the one before. They kept going, attempt after attempt. With every answer that came back honoring your name, the math began to shift, because one voice defending you could be explained away as loyalty, a second could be brushed off as coincidence. But when the answers kept coming in, person after person, each one consistent, each one unprompted in its depth, each one adding another layer to the same portrait of you that stops being explainable as bias or chance, that becomes evidence, just not the kind they were searching for. Something else was happening at the same time, something they had absolutely not planned for. The people they were approaching were starting to notice the pattern of the questions. They were noticing the energy underneath them, and quietly, without your enemy realizing it, the focus had shifted. You were no longer the subject being examined. Your enemy was. People began comparing notes. Someone who had been approached mentioned it to someone else. Did they come to you asking about so-and-so? Did you notice how they were asking? What do you think is actually driving this? Without any coordination, a fuller picture began forming, and it was not a picture of you, it was a picture of them. The scope of what they had been doing became visible, how many people they had approached, the consistent pressure behind the questions, and the desperation underneath the careful framing. Your enemy believed they were gathering witnesses. They were actually gathering observers, and the observers were watching them with growing clarity. Everything they had set in motion was already turning against them. They just had not felt it yet. The trap had fully closed around them. The only remaining question was how long before the weight of it became impossible to ignore. They expected to find damage. They found something they had no plan for. The absence of what they were looking for did more harm to their mission than any direct confrontation ever could have. Because when you come looking for scandal and find nothing, not a whispered grudge, not a veiled complaint, not even mild frustration from someone who once crossed paths with you during a difficult season, that silence is not neutral, that silence is a verdict. They pressed harder, sharper questions, more people, different approaches. Each time, the same clean record met them, no hidden wounds, no one who had been waiting to finally speak, just person after person who had encountered the real you and walked away carrying something positive from the experience. Think about what your life has to look like for that to be true, to live in such a way that even people who once disagreed with you, even people who experienced genuine friction with you, even people who witnessed you at your most tested, they still cannot hand your enemy anything usable. That is not luck. That is not image management. That is character, deeply rooted, long cultivated, bone-level character that does not shift based on who is watching. You were not perfect, but you were real. And being real, maintained consistently over a long enough stretch of time, builds something that no performed version of a person ever could. Every empty-handed return made your enemy's obsession more visible. Every failed attempt to surface your flaws made the mission itself more suspicious. People who had been neutral started asking their own quiet questions, not about you, but about the person who kept returning with the same energy, looking for something that simply was not there. The absence of dirt did not just fail to help them, it became the clearest evidence against them. Now here is the part that belongs entirely to you. what it actually means that there was nothing to find. Think about how you have moved through your life, not perfectly, nobody does, but consistently, the same values in private that you hold in public, the same character in the difficult moments that you show in the easy ones. Think about the times you chose to tell the truth when a more comfortable version of events was available and no one would have known the difference. Think about the people you treated with dignity when your position would have allowed you to do otherwise. Think about every moment you chose to show up as yourself, with no audience, simply because that is who you are. Every one of those moments was a brick. You laid them one at a time, without thinking about what you were building, because you were not constructing a defense. You were just living, moving through the world with integrity, because it was the only way that felt honest to you. What your enemy found when they came looking is the structure those bricks built. Solid, dense, with no gaps, wide enough for doubt to fit through, no hollow spaces where a rumor could take root, no cracks deep enough for a lie to anchor itself. That structure carries no nameplate. You never announced it, you never managed its perception, it simply exists, quietly and permanently, and when your enemy arrived trying to dismantle it, they could not make it move. That is not armor you put on when you saw the attack coming. That is the life you are already living. The difference matters. Armor can be removed. Armor can be found and penetrated if someone searches long enough and at the right angle. But a life built in truth is not armor. It is architecture. It is structural. It is load-bearing. And when someone tries to argue against architecture, the architecture does not argue back. It simply stands and lets the argument exhaust itself against it. They exhausted themselves completely, and everything they tried to take down is standing exactly where you left it. This is the center of everything, the pivot point, the moment where everything they launched came back with full force, aimed directly at them. They gathered praise about you while expecting to collect complaints, and now they were sitting with all of it, alone, and it was burning in ways they could not explain to anyone. Every compliment was a sentence handed down in a court they did not know they were standing in. Every "that is one of the most solid people I know" was a verdict delivered without a judge in sight. Every account someone shared of how you showed up for them, how you handled yourself with integrity under pressure, how you changed something in them simply by being who you are, every single one of those testimonies landed like a judgment on everything your enemy had been doing, thinking and quietly nurturing in the darkest corner of their motivation. Here is the truth about praise heard by the wrong ears. To someone who genuinely loves you, praise sounds like confirmation, but to someone who resents you, someone who needs you to be lesser in order to feel adequate, praise is not comforting. Praise is punishment. Every kind word about your character cuts because it highlights the hollow space in theirs. Every testimony about your consistency holds up a mirror to their own inconsistency. Every account of your impact becomes a reminder of the impact they have not built and will not build, as long as they are spending their energy on missions like this one. What makes it unbearable for them is that the people offering that praise are not even trying to wound anyone. They are not performing. They are not choosing words strategically. They are simply answering a question with the truth, naturally, without hesitation, the way a person answers when the answer has never been in question. That effortless sincerity is what stings the deepest, because it confirms that the praise is genuine. You cannot blame bias or exaggeration or selective loyalty for distorting the picture. People just genuinely feel that way about you. And there is no counter-move available to someone who runs into that. You cannot debate a person out of their own lived experience of who you are. Your enemy could not explain any of this to anyone without confessing what they had been doing. There is no version of that confession that earns sympathy. There is only the full weight of the embarrassment, carried silently and completely alone. So they sat with it quietly, burning with absolutely no recourse, and you were out here living, moving, building, being exactly who you have always been, unbothered, not because you did not care, but because you had nothing to conceal and never had. That is not carelessness. That is the deep, unshakable calm that belongs to a person who knows exactly who they are and has lived that truth consistently enough that the life around them has become its own testimony. That is what real power looks like. Not a reaction, not a defense, just a life lived at a level that makes attacks irrelevant before they ever arrive. Here is the revelation that unsettled them the most. This distinction is everything, so stay with it. They expected to find people who liked you. They had prepared for that. Likability is manageable. Likability is surface level. Likability fades when circumstances shift, and they believed that with enough doubt seeded in the right places, likability could be undone. But they did not find people who liked you. They found people who trusted you, and trust is an entirely different thing. Trust is not built on charm or first impressions or showing up when it costs you nothing. Trust is built in the moments nobody applauds. It is built when you answer the call you could have let ring. It is built when you say the honest thing instead of the easier one. It is built when you make the right choice in private, knowing that breaking it would go completely unnoticed. It is built in the way you carried yourself through seasons that would have fractured other people, not loudly, not for recognition, but simply because that is who you are when no one is keeping score. Every person they questioned had first-hand evidence about you, not opinions, not impressions, evidence, real, lived experience of the real you, stored in their memory, immovable by suggestion. When your enemy arrived with whispers, they walked directly into the full weight of that evidence. It could not be shifted. It could not be nudged. It simply stood there, speaking your name with complete authority. The sting your enemy could not escape was this: they do not have that in their own life. There is no one holding that kind of evidence about them. No one would stand with that same conviction and vouch for their character without a moment of hesitation. They knew it, and that knowledge did not produce humility, it produced bitterness, which is exactly the kind of downward pull that destroys a person from the inside while they are out there trying to take down someone else. What made their position even worse is that trust does not announce itself. It does not arrive with fanfare or explanation. When the people they approached began vouching for you, they were not delivering prepared speeches or staging a defense. They were simply answering immediately, naturally, without needing to search for examples because the examples were already right there, close and vivid and real. That immediacy is impossible to manufacture. You can prompt someone to say positive things if you give them enough setup, but you cannot produce that unhesitating, bone-deep response that comes from someone who has genuinely experienced your character over time. When a person has to pause before defending you, that pause says something. When a person does not pause at all, when the words come out before the question has even finished landing, that is not performance, that is testimony. Every person they encountered responded that way, without pause, without qualification, without a single exception. And now those same people carry something new with them, the knowledge that someone came asking, the awareness of what was behind the questions, and the memory of the moment when they chose truth over the invitation to doubt. That choice permanently bonded them to your name in a way that has nothing to do with you managing it. Your enemy did not just fail to damage your reputation, they deepened the loyalty of every single person they tried to recruit against you. They strengthened exactly what they came to weaken. That is the kind of miscalculation that only happens when someone is operating from envy instead of strategy. Your enemy had written the outcome in advance. They had mapped out the sequence of events, decided what confirmation would come back, and prepared for how people would respond. Everything was planned before the first move was made. In their version of events, you were the one being exposed. The people they approached were supposed to confirm it. Your enemy was the one finally bringing the truth to light, except the people did not cooperate. The confirmation never came, and what had been prepared with such confidence fell apart in real time, in full view of every person who had been approached to validate it. That is a very specific kind of humiliation. It is not the kind that happens privately, where a person can quietly adjust and move on without anyone knowing. It is the kind that unfolds in front of witnesses, where you commit to a version of events, present it to people, and those people, one by one, choose a completely different version. Every person who came back with praise about you did not simply fail to confirm your enemy's case. They actively dismantled it. They became living evidence against the exact position your enemy had staked their credibility on. And now those people carry that knowledge permanently. They know what was attempted. They know it failed. They understood the shape of what was being assembled, even if they never named it directly. And every time your enemy speaks going forward, there is a quiet reservation attached to it, an unspoken asterisk, a memory of the time they went looking for your worst and encountered your best at every single turn. Your enemy's credibility took a wound that does not announce itself and does not fully close. It is not a dramatic, visible wound. It is the quiet kind, the kind that changes how a person's words land from that point forward. You were not present for any of it, and you still came out completely on top. This is the turn, the moment when the pursuit reversed direction, not because of anything you did, not because anyone fought on your behalf, but because of the simple and unstoppable logic of what happens when obsession becomes visible over time. As the people they approached began comparing notes, a fuller picture emerged. The number of people who had been asked, the consistent pressure behind the questions, the frustration that surfaced whenever the answers did not cooperate, the way they kept returning to the same name with the same energy without anyone coordinating. An outline took shape, and it was not an outline of you, it was an outline of your enemy. That outline revealed something they absolutely did not intend to reveal. It revealed jealousy. It revealed insecurity that could not stay still, a person so unsettled by watching someone else move in purpose and peace that they had spent genuine time and real energy trying to unravel it. Consider how that looks when viewed in its entirety. The planning, the outreach, the repeated attempts, the persistence in the face of failure after failure. None of that reads as righteous concern. None of that reads as someone sincerely seeking accountability. That reads as obsession. And obsession does not win people over. It makes them want distance. While your enemy was out there becoming the subject of quiet concern among the very people they recruited, you were simply living. You were not strategizing. You were not monitoring. You were not even aware that any of this was happening. You had nothing to monitor because there was nothing to hide. Your public character and your private character were the same thing, not because every detail of your life was visible to others, but because the version of you that people encountered matched the version that existed when no one was looking. That kind of coherence is rare. People recognize it when they encounter it, even when they cannot fully name what they are responding to. What they feel is the absence of a gap between the person in front of them and the person being described. When your enemy arrived trying to create doubt about that coherence, the people they approached did not find doubt. They found more confirmation. Your enemy came into this wanting to reduce your presence. They ended up reducing their own. The attention they tried to direct at you swung back and illuminated them, not as someone uncovering truth, but as someone publicly losing a battle against reality that had already been settled long before they arrived. And through all of it, you were not even part of that conversation. There is a word for what happened to your name through all of this: coronation. Not the ceremonial kind with formal announcements and recognized occasions, the permanent kind, the kind that happens when person after person, independently, from entirely different angles and histories with you, confirms the same truth about who you are. When that level of consistency emerges, you are not simply respected anymore. You are sealed. Your name carries a weight that rumor cannot undo, because that weight has already been verified by witnesses who had every reason and every opportunity to say something different and did not. Your enemy wanted to strip your name of dignity. Instead, they ended up adding to it. Every person who defended you without being prompted placed something permanent on your behalf. Every freely given, uncoached account of your impact became another layer of something that cannot now be removed. Every voice that came back consistent and clear became part of a record that will outlast every version of this conflict. What is remarkable about that crown is that you never campaigned for it. You never asked anyone to defend you. You never worked any angles to ensure the right people were saying the right things about you at the right times. You simply lived. And the crown assembled itself piece by piece in conversations you were not present for, out of experiences you gave people, simply by showing up as yourself over and over again. That is the most sovereign kind of recognition available to a person. It is not the kind that depends on your ongoing management of perception. It is not the kind that needs you to maintain or protect it. It is the kind that exists because it cannot help but exist, because the reality it reflects is too consistent, too deeply verified across too many independent sources to be anything other than exactly what it is. Your enemy placed that crown on your head in front of the exact audience they assembled to witness your downfall. They did it by accident. They did it by pursuing a mission that turned every person it touched into a witness for you. And now they carry the full weight of that irony, that the people they recruited to bury your name became the very ones who lifted it higher than it had ever been before any of this started. You are unmoved, untouched, elevated by the very hands that reached out to pull you down. Chosen one, receive this fully. You are not defined by what is said about you when you are not present. You are defined by what cannot be said. You are defined by the absence of ammunition your life provides. You are defined by what happens when someone goes searching for your worst and encounters your best at every single turn, not because you prepared for that moment, but because that is simply who you are. They went looking. They found your best, without exception, without hesitation, without a single voice in all of those conversations breaking in the direction they needed it to break. That is not timing. That is not defense. That is the natural harvest of a life lived in truth, with genuine care for others, with a character that holds the same shape in every situation regardless of who is present. Your enemy gave you something by coming for you. They gave you the most public confirmation available, not a statement you made about yourself, but the collective, independent, unanimous testimony of every person they approached. That testimony now lives permanently in those people. Your enemy cannot retract it, cannot revise it, and cannot escape it. They wanted your name tarnished. Every person they asked polished it instead. Every single one. The verdict is unanimous. The verdict is permanent. And it has always been yours.